The Marathon bombing trial is a huge media event, but also poses a challenge for the press as the details of that horrific day unfold in court. It's not always clear what to report and when to pull back. WGBH News reporter Adam Riley has this report and a warning: some viewers may find some of the material disturbing.
After 2 days of testimony, it's clear that the trial of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev won't cast doubt on the basic facts of the Boston Marathon bombings. Tsarnaev's attorneys admit he did it. What the trial is providing is agonizing new details about the attacks themselves.
Survivors and first responders reliving some of the worst moments of their lives.
For Bill Richard, that meant taking the stand and recounting the moment when he realized his son Martin wouldn't live.
I saw a little boy who had his body severely damaged by an explosion, and I just knew from what I saw that there was no chance.
And then there was Jeff Bowman, who lost both legs in the bombings and described preparing to die.
I could see my bones, flesh, and then going on to say, quote, "This is how it's going to end."
That testimony was reported verbatim on TV, online, and on Twitter, where some people were overwhelmed by the macabre details. As Steve Koczela put it, "I have muted Tsarnaev. Can't work while reliving all the horror." There was also new video shown in court, including grisly scenes of the bombing's aftermath.
We have done the best that we can to edit this graphic video, but there's no way that you can look at it without being taken back to the horrible events of that day.
But if recreating the horrors of that day makes sense in the courtroom, it may not make sense for the broader public.
I can't imagine they expected it to get this emotional this fast. I don't think any of us expected that.
Which means the media has to decide how many of the gory details we really want to know.
Just to set the scene for everybody, so there's about 40 media people inside the actual courtroom and maybe another 40 or 60 in these overflow rooms. When you're actually in the courtroom, you can only use a soft touch piece of technology like an iPad or an iPhone. So you can't even use something that clicks. You can't make any noise. You can't turn to the person sitting next to you like you could in a movie theater and say, "What did he say?" You can't talk. And the microphones are very, very muffled. So you're straining to hear, and so you're tapping away, and you're trying to get the essence of what everybody is saying, and everybody speaks fairly rapidly, like I am right now. How many of my words could you have written down? Right. So everybody's like, so you're taking these snippets, and sadly, but it's human nature, the most compelling snippets are the ones that stick in your head, and you write them down. And so people are tweeting those out. They're also trying to write them down so they can do a broad form story, an in-depth newspaper story like the Globe is doing. They have many people taking notes, or for broadcast. So there's no transcript handed out at the end of the day. And you're doing the best you can. This all leads to the point that this is just outrage and pathetic that in this day and age, we don't have a camera in the courtroom. And if we did, anybody who's upset by this coverage could edit themselves. They could listen to what they want. They could, hear what they want. They could go in and out of the trial. If they found certain things disturbing, they could turn it off. But, the media is doing the best they can.
Well, we've talked about this many times, and I agree with you completely that there ought to be a camera in the courtroom carrying this. The Whitey Bulger trial and this are the two great trials in Boston since Sacco and Vanzetti, and we are not being allowed to see them with modern technology. This happened to all of us. Obviously, it happened to the survivors of the bombing in a much more direct way than it did to the rest of us, but this was something that happened to all of us as a community. We should be able to see it if we choose to see it.
Well, I'm going to move away from the cameras in the courtroom argument and just say that I think the reason that you also saw, aside from some of the practical, technical issues of trying to catch what you can catch in the newsroom, this was new stuff. Yep. So for me, I'm like everybody else, like, I never saw this. So you're drawn to that, to see, video and how people responded in the moment, because you had not seen that. That has an impact that you can't even describe. Yes, you saw the other stuff. Yes, we've seen so much about that, but that new video really took people to a different place. And I think we as journalists are always confronted with these questions when there is graphic video. How much do you show, and what is the taste line? And there's no uniform taste line among us. We sort of go with our discussions in our individual newsrooms about what people can take. Now, what I would say is we are fortunate to have new technology. You don't have to put everything out on your main mode of distribution. You can put it on the internet or other places where people can seek it if they want to see more. So I think that the reason we saw more than we might have on this first day was not only because it was taking us back, but because a lot of stuff was new and people were carried away with that.
It's very easy to just see the same images repeated over and over again. As we can all think of the camera angles that we've seen over and over again from the day of the bombing and later on in the manhunt. The new imagery really jars you, as you said. I'm actually interested in the videos. The videos, I presume, have been presented to members of the media by the court. They're obviously not, they're not recreations or drawings.
At the end of the day, they give you all the exhibits. So they play those things in court, and at the end of the day, they make them available.
So that's a case where, as you said, the news organizations have the ability to figure out what they want to put on the evening newscast. And I think the TV package that I saw did a pretty good job of saying, just so you know, this is what you're going to see. If you want to change the channel, that's fine. And then I agree with you. I think that, from the perspective of history, from the perspective of the people who really want to see this, put it all online. It's a public document, and put the warnings, say this is very graphic and this is going to, is not for everyone.
By the way, there were certain clips that even the court refused to release because they were afraid that, everybody would make the public use of them, and they found them too distasteful.
I think this is an area where you can be very conflicted. The test generally is, in a newsroom, is that you don't show gratuitous violence there. I mean, for the sake of trying to shock an audience or get an audience. I mean, that borders on pornography when you're doing that kind of thing. But in this case, what I kind of go back to the whole idea of having a court system that's transparent. Yes, it touches on, should we be able to use technology today to see what's going on? We did away with the Star Chamber centuries ago, and what was happening here, why this was so shocking, is that the prosecution came out with everything it had, I gather because it wanted to make a point to the jury. Their audience is those 12 people. And to say this was a horrible, horrible thing, and this guy should take full responsibility for it. And as one of the reporters said in there, we didn't expect that much that fast, but the prosecution, I think, felt we're going to get it all out there and make the point. The whole rest of this trial now is going to be, I think the defense is just basically has got to sit back and let it play out and hope that the next phase.
Yeah, they've done virtually no cross-examination.
Let me just pick up on something you said. But your gratuitous may be different from mine. See, this is where I get very nervous about this. And I feel that since we look at a lot of stuff as a part of our jobs, I go back to the World Trade Center. Remember, they had to start putting restrictions on some of that video because we're desensitized now. So showing the people falling out of the window or showing people being blown up over here becomes something that we think is viable footage to tell a story, but we're not getting the same impact as it has for people who are watching it. So that's where it gets dicey.
And also, let's not have a talk show where this stuff is used as video wallpaper.
Well, exactly. That too.
Over and over again.
Right.
Well, that's where the gratuitous comes in. If you look, the other thing I compare it to is the terrorists, the beheadings.
Yes.
You know, how many times do you need to see that to know what a horrible, horrible thing it was? And I think it's this: how many dismembered bodies do you see, or how many? That's what I mean by is how far do you go?
News organizations have been pretty responsible.